everybody, and welcome to a new episode. And this week, I got some more interesting NASCAR merchandise to show you what I got. It's this thing. It's a NASCAR RC car from 2003, and it's also one of my favorite schemes ever, which means I love it even more. Yep, and the best part is, it actually works. See, I got the remote here, and yeah, you can't see it because it's on the floor, but it is working. See, it just hit the camera. There we go. So that should prove that this thing works. So no, this isn't just a government conspiracy. This car actually works. See, watch. See, it works, and it works great. To the 15th episode of the Burnout series, and this week is arguably one of my favorite weekends of the whole season, Darlington Throwback Weekend. And yep, it's always a fun time because you get to see all these cool throwbacks come out. I'm more of a fan of the weeks up to the Throwback Weekend because you get to see all those schemes revealed, and we got to see so many good schemes this year. I was going to do a tier list, but for some reason, hit film sucks, so every time I try to do something about like my footage I recorded, it just after a while just blinks. Like every other frame is black, so it just blinks and just a seizure-inducing mess. Like I think one of my previous Burnout episodes had that happen later in the video, so I'm pretty sure this might be my last video with hit film. I think after this I'm just gonna uninstall it and get Premiere. Like, sure, it's $10 a month, but at least it's gonna be a lot better of an editing software. So if that doesn't fix it, well, must be my computer then. I gotta get a new computer soon, which by soon I mean probably not for a couple more months. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started with the news from this week. First things first, of course, probably a pretty big thing. William Byron scoring his third victory of the year at Darlington in the Jeff Gordon Throwback. Pretty cool car and an amazing win for the 24 team. The 24 car in general's 100th ever victory. So the only two drivers ever win in that car were Jeff Gordon and William Byron, so it's pretty nice to see that. So, and if you had to ask me if he definitely deserved that victory, yes he did. He was a silent threat all race long, was in the top 5 throughout the race, and he managed to sort of get lucky at the end of that race, so, but regardless, he definitely had that win pretty much well deserved. But if you had to ask me, I feel like the win, if I had to see if like he was the most deserving winner of that race, probably that'd be no. I feel like Kyle Larson and Ross Chastain deserved that win a little bit more, and I feel like they probably would have put on a great battle for the end if, what happened next didn't actually happen. So Ross Chastain was, I feel like, one of the biggest contenders for the victory all race long. He was up in the front throughout the race, won stage 2 in amazing fashion, and he was up front on the final restart, or the second to last restart, whatever. But, if you had to ask me, he had that win in the freaking bag. He had that win pretty much sealed up with a bow on it, and he blew it. Never forget that life as a Ross Chastain fan is one of the most painful things in the world. Ross Chastain in the last restart accidentally got tight into Larson and wrecked both of them into the first turn. Larson managed to finish the race. Ross had too much damage because the damage clock is the stupidest thing on the planet, and ended up finishing out of the race. Or, well, he didn't finish, he DNF'd. So, that's fun! And that was the first race that UPS came back in, so they're absolutely never coming back after that performance. So, fantastic, Ross. You scared away one of NASCAR's most iconic sponsors. Great job!
Why do you invest in the funny how
So like I said before, I feel like if Ross didn't do that stupid thing at the end of the race, we could have had pretty much a similar battle with like Kurt Busch and Ricky Craven in 2003. We could have had Kyle Larson and Ross Chastain. On the 20th anniversary of that race as well, we could have had a similar battle for the win. But no! Ross, with his giant ego, just had to get in the way and ruin it for everybody. But at least you got to see the 24 car win, which William Byron kind of got that win snubbed from him last year because Logano decided to play dirty and put him in the wall at the end of the race. I mean, we still managed to see him win this year, so pretty good redemption story from last season. And Byron, with his third victory of the year, just on an amazing hot streak. The best driver currently right now in the Cup Series. So, pretty well done. Then a couple other drivers to talk about. There was a couple Toyota drivers as well that were well worth talking about. Martin Truex Jr., I think, was on the pole for this race, won the first stage, and was a consistent factor throughout the second stage. But he was battling for the second stage point with Ross Chastain in the end. Managed to get into him, and unfortunately, Truex spun out and never recovered. He was then also in a late wreck, taking him out of the race. So Martin Truex, I feel like, was a pretty consistent factor for this race. But he wasn't really that good at the end of it, so I feel like if he managed to win that race, he probably would have kind of was a little bit of a fluke, kind of got lucky. But, I mean, still a pretty consistent factor throughout that race. And then lastly, the last driver to talk about, I don't know how many times I've talked about Bubba Wallace before, but this week he was a pretty solid threat throughout this race as well. He was on the front row for the early portion of the race. He kind of fell back in the second half of the race, but managed to recover with a top 5 finish. So, like I've said before, Bubba Wallace is probably one of the most stellar driver at the bigger tracks. Like the big 2-mile ovals. Darlington, I feel like, is on that point of being on that big track portion. But I feel like he does have the potential to be a major threat if we give him more of a chance. So, give it some time. I feel like Bubba's still relatively early in his career at this point. I think this is only his 5th season, so I feel like if you give him just a little bit more time, he might be a major factor in future seasons. So, I mean, keep in mind, Martin Truex, it took him almost a decade before he managed to become successful. So, I mean, maybe Wallace might have a similar story. So, I don't know. And then, last thing to talk about with the Cup race, there were a couple big wrecks throughout the race as well. The first one was caused by a loose wheel, which Eric Jones had his wheel fall off during the race, causing a big wreck. And then the second one was on a late restart. I don't really remember who was involved in it, but I know like Tyler Reddick, Martin Truex were for sure involved in it. So, but I don't really remember much from that part, even though I was literally watching the race at the time, but I don't really remember. So that's it for the Cup race. Solid Darlington race weekend. Pretty good 7 out of 10 race. Not necessarily an amazing one, but still pretty good. Really comes to show that Darlington is still a fantastic track all these years later and definitely deserves to stay on the schedule for years and years to come. Moving on to the Xfinity race, even though Larson kind of got screwed over at the end of the Cup race, he still managed to come home from Darlington with a victory, scoring a win with Culligan Racing with an amazing battle for the finish with John Hunter Nemechek. They were doing some hard racing, and then in turn 4, Nemechek bumped into Larson and ended up spinning himself out, and Larson walked away with the victory. That was a really good finish. Back-to-back weeks now, we've had an exciting finish which involves Larson and a JGR driver, but this time Larson reigns supreme in the number 10 car for Culligan Racing. And then there was, like, of course, there was another big wreck in the Xfinity race. So, I mean, I love to see some chaos like that, but at the same time, at Darlington, it makes me sad because you get to see all those beautiful throwbacks, which a lot of these teams work hard on making, all just end up turning into scrap metal because it just turned into major wrecks, and it just kind of makes me sad because a lot of these schemes are just beautiful. So I really hate to see them wreck out like that. And then lastly, for the truck race, it was a 3-race weekend. Yeah, 3-race weekend. Yep. Christian X in the Herschel McGriff throwback scores his second victory of the season. Even though it was a little anticlimactic, it ended under caution. It was still a pretty okay race. At least I heard about it. I was working that night, but whatever. All right, so that is it for the Darlington weekends. So anyways, before we get started, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications, and I mean, we've already started, but we gotta start the other news as well. So let's go ahead and get started with the other news. We got 2 other things to talk about. First things first is for the Chicago Street Course race, which, as of recent, has been having a little bit of problems as of recent. They've been struggling a lot with a lot of people in Chicago, a lot of media outlets in Chicago, trying to fearmonger people in Chicago, trying to make everyone turn against this idea for the street course race, which I mean, like, I'm kind of mixed about it, like I said before. Like, I love to see how this street course race turns out, but at the same time, I could totally understand why people in Chicago aren't a fan of it. As far as I'm aware, there's going to be a lot of traffic after the race. There's going to be some major traffic issues and stuff like that. But at the same time, I feel like stuff like this could easily be fixable. Because, like, it's right on the edge of the coast. So I feel like it's not going to be as bad as many people believe. But I still agree that there are some problems with the street course race, but I do like the idea of it because I feel like if the Chicago street race succeeds, we can actually try out different markets before. I've actually seen people talk about how we should have a street course race in Southern California to replace Auto Club until they finish their renovations and make the track a short track, even though I hated the idea absolutely. So, yeah, I feel like a sort of like an LA street course or something. Like they did this before, like in the late 90s, early 2000s with the street course race like around the LA Coliseum. Why don't we bring that back for a NASCAR points race? Then make it the Coliseum race a points race. So yeah, pretty nice with that. If you had to ask me if Chicago is a market worth staying in, I'd say let's see how this first race turns out, and if it's good, let's come back for 2024. If not, let's find a new market for 2024. I mean, regardless, it's either going to be, there's going to be one more race after 2023 or no race after 2023. So, I mean, regardless, NASCAR's not going to be racing on the street course race forever. They're going to probably be moving every other year to a new market. So, which I feel like is definitely going to help NASCAR in the long term. And then lastly, for the last piece of news is involving Ross Chastain, like I mentioned before. Trackhouse, I believe, is going to be cracking down on Ross and sort of telling him, dude, we love you, but please stop trying to get in the fights and actually win races. I mean, like, even Denny Hamlin, who is probably one of Ross's biggest rivals so far, says that he has the capability of winning races. He just keeps getting in the fights with people. So, I feel like if Ross calms down, stop getting into fights, stop making everybody mad, he's going to be a future champion. So, alright. And that is pretty much it for this weekend. So, yep, that's it for the Darlington scripts, aside from my Wilkesboro predictions, which we got a truck race and a all-star race to talk about. So, anyways, here are my predictions for the North Wilkesboro weekend. Starting off with the trucks, again, I really don't have any idea on who's good and bad anymore, so I'm going with the driver who won the Martinsville race earlier this year, Corey Heim, in the number 11 truck, winning at the first ever truck race back at North Wilkesboro. And then lastly, for the All-Star race, I'm just going to be talking about the All-Star race winner in general. I'm not going to talk about the open winners because I feel like it's going to be out of hands. But it doesn't matter regardless because I already talked about it in my 2023 predictions video earlier this year. I'm predicting Ross Chastain will go on to win the All-Star race, which I feel like will be a perfect fit. That one of the most marketable drivers right now in the Cup Series wins the first race back at the Borough. And that is it for... Yeah, and that is it for the video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Tune in next week when I will talk about the All-Star race in North Wilkesboro and all the news coming out, which usually means I'm probably just going to miss a bunch of stuff because it's just kind of lame. I'm so bad at making videos like that now, so I don't know why you guys keep watching it. Anyways, I'm going to play with my RC car now. Bye, guys. It's so fun. If only you guys can see it, but I can't move my camera. Because I'm too lazy to move it. It ran over my foot, but that's fine. I keep hitting things all over my room, but that's fine. Yeah! This is what NASCAR should be. Don't put drivers in the car, just race it with a remote control.